Alright, what's going on, guys? Hope you all are doing well. So, I don't think anybody saw this coming, to be honest. This was quite the surprise to have the Halo Infinite multiplayer just sort of randomly drop out of nowhere on the 15th. And I got my hands on to play it, and immediately I wanted to follow up my beta review that I did when I did play this a few months back. And so, how does this compare? How does the full game of multiplayer stack up against the beta and just in general Halo games as is? Now, I did clarify in my previous review that I'm really coming from a position of somebody that used to play Halo quite a lot, but definitely not so much the most recent titles. Halo 4 and 5, I barely touched at all, but I was a massive fan of Halos 1, 2, and 3. Played a ton of Reach as well, but maybe not so much recently until Infinite. And I say that just to have a clear stance and a standpoint of where I'm coming from when we're reviewing this game. So that said, if you guys enjoyed the video today, and if you wouldn't mind dropping a thumbs up, it only takes a second of your time, and it helps out the video tremendously. And of course, if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe as well. Now, this is a game that released under the weirdest circumstances. I feel like most people were expecting Halo Infinite's multiplayer to be available and released sometime possibly after the holidays, but it's come out in November, and it's also completely free to play, as I mentioned earlier in the video. So how does that really affect the environment of Halo? On its face value, this is going to encourage a lot of new people to try the game that have previously either never been interested, maybe never had the opportunity, or it just didn't interest them because it was locked behind a paywall until now. Now, of course, it's the full multiplayer experience that will be free to play, and I feel like that will be the best place to start. I want to talk about core gameplay. So the first and most obvious change I noticed even from the beta was how smoothly this game ran, and I had a little bit of issues with performance during the beta when it was around, and obviously that was like a really small test, and that was more of just sort of a technical showcase, that at least that's what they called it, but this is literally a full release of a game, and I gotta say, as far as that standard is concerned, it definitely holds up. Full disclosure, my entire game was captured on PC, and I do have a 3080, and that's basically what it will be rendered on, so as far as that is concerned, I didn't have any issues running the game literally whatsoever. It really worked fine straight out of the box. I didn't have to change any settings. It's entirely possible that won't be the case for everybody depending on what your system is and what you're playing on, but at least as far as I was concerned, there were really no issues at all to speak of with performance. Speaking of which, just as an adjunct, also the netcode online during my multiplayer games was surprisingly solid. I've been used to some of the older Halo games having, somewhat scuffed online experiences where you would get like that weird rubber banding effect and get killed around corners and stuff, and that happens a lot less, I noticed in here, and it's possibly because there are so many players on right now and matchmaking is, very plentiful, and a lot of it is most likely due to just optimal connection based on where you're located and everything. So matchmaking is pretty solid, but the netcode within like the game itself, and especially how that interacts with gunplay, all felt very good. There wasn't really any issues to speak of there either. The game feels very much like classic Halo when it comes to the style and also the map structure. This was something that I think I was turned off to by recent Halo games. The addition of sprint was one of the things where they had to overcompensate with map design and make it so that those two systems coincide, and I feel like Infinite has got the balance just right. Clearly, in the older Halo games, like 1, 2, and 3, there was no sprint, but the maps were significantly smaller, and it was literally designed with that movement style in mind. I would say Halo Infinite is almost the same insofar as, like, the movement you are capable of coincides and gels with the map very nicely. You do have technically what you might call advanced movement in here, and the ability to slide and then jump out of slide, and there's some very interesting maneuvers you can get to, but I'll talk about movement more in just a little bit. The map design, however, I felt like was very well thought out, and it seemed to make sense for this game. Even on the larger scale experiences, like the big team battles, the maps you can play in there, and also the vehicles that interact with it, they all seemed to work like these were, well thought out intentions. Now, in terms of game modes, you have your very classic, like 4v4, you have your big team battles, which I think personally happen to be the most fun so far on Infinite, and you also have ranked play, which I haven't played too much of just yet, but from what I've gathered, most people seem to like ranked as it is right now. It seems to be pretty satisfying to climb up the ladder and to actually obtain rewards from, playing better and things like that, so it's good that ranked is definitely a presence in Halo Infinite. Now, the full game of Infinite is very similar to the beta in the sense that all of the ways in obtaining weapons and also Spartan abilities are roughly the same. No matter what mode you're playing, you need to obtain either weapons or abilities by fighting for power positions within the map. You obviously don't spawn with them, but you can obtain obtain them by either winning gunfights, playing well, positioning yourself properly, and also waiting for them, because they do spawn in these boxes that need to essentially recharge, and you will not have access to the weapon until the same one previously acquired from the box is now out of play. But basically, you can pretty much reliably see these weapons spawn, and you can know where they are and what weapons you might gravitate towards based on your strengths as a player and your general playstyle. Power weapons are obviously going to play the biggest role in determining how well you perform in the match, but also as an adjunct to that are these Spartan abilities such as like active camo and combat shield. And while I certainly do feel that they had at least some presence match to match, they didn't have like an overabundance of importance in determining the outcome of a match. You would have a ability that would possibly be good for one situation or maybe your next gunfight, but other than that, it's not going to be something that like carries you through the match, or they're not really like gimmicky. I was very happy with this because I wasn't a huge fan of the entire system sort of relying on abilities, or at least the primary like method in terms of getting kills or just doing well in the match. In previous Halo games, I feel like relied almost solely on what ability you were using, and I really think that they're best used as like a tool rather than the actual like subset of your class. Guns themselves, though, including power weapons, will be a mix of weapons you know from previous Halo games, along with some new ones that I'm not super familiar with at the moment. As far as playing casual game modes, they're all like assault rifle starts, but if you're playing ranked, it's going to be BR starts, so it's definitely been confirmed. I was wondering about that in the beta, but they have went ahead and actually confirmed that. Now, a few more quick good things about the game I'm going to discuss, because in a little bit I will discuss the things I didn't like so much about Infinite, but I gotta say, even continuing on from the beta, one of the strongest elements of this game is the movement, and because I know sprint has been so controversial in previous years, in my opinion, this is the Halo that got the balance just right, because I do understand the argument as well, where it's like no sprint in a video game in 2021 at some point just sort of feels outdated, and I understand why Halo would want to sort of at least try and keep up with the times and make their game a little bit feel more familiar to what gamers are now playing these days. I think one of the fundamental problems with sprint in older Halo games, and around the time I stopped playing, was it sort of lost its identity as Halo and felt a little bit more just like a generic like arena shooter. It was very hard to describe, but I also understand why people felt that Halo sort of lost its identity in this sense. Infinite seems to have got this balance just right, where it seems like the sprint is really only used for making advanced movement options, and I think that is a wonderful thing. It's not primarily your tool going to be used for traversing the map quickly. There's other ways to do that. Vehicles or even launch pads can transport you around the map very quickly, but I think the sprint is primarily used to chain other movement techniques into it, and I think for this arena shooter style works unbelievably well. Sprint isn't that much faster than walking, but what you'll notice is if you're playing against a team of like sprint heavy users, then you'll be able to kill them quite easily, because the sprint to fire time and how quickly you can get your gun up means a lot in a game like Halo, and you can certainly take advantage of that. You really have to like want to choose your sprints wisely, but also at the same time, if you know when you're going to be sprinting and when you're going to be approaching a gunfight, you can use this to either chain a slide and throw off your enemy. The movement system allows you to get around the map insanely creatively, and you can maneuver just in individual gunfights on a level that I feel like has never previously been available in Halo. And before I take apart the bad stuff a little bit, I want to discuss one final great thing about Infinite, and at least in my opinion, this has to be the time to kill. And perhaps I'm not the best judge of this because I did not play much of Halo 4 and 5, and I don't really remember exactly what the time to kill felt like in that game for the most part, but I just gotta say in Infinite, it feels fair, and it seems like it's where it should be, very much like Halo 3 in my opinion. To be honest, this has never really been a problem Halo has had to contend with anyways, as the time to kill has always rewarded a steady hand and, you know, smart plays, smart positioning. That's what really matters, but the time to kill just feels like it's where it needs to be. Every single gunfight I won, I really felt like I earned. Every single gunfight I lost, I know I made a mistake or I aimed bad or whatever it was. Like I'm blaming myself instead of the game, and that's the sign of a good video game in my opinion. After playing the multiplayer bunch and letting it soak in, the core gameplay loop reminded me of why I liked Halo to begin with, and so this was a nice refresher, I would say, for people who possibly were a fan of the older games but haven't really had it done for them in Halo in recent years. This might be worth giving a try, and because of its free-to-play nature, there's really no harm in doing so. However, there are a few downsides to Halo Infinite, and a couple things that I didn't like particularly about the game. And first and foremost, that's going to have to be the vehicle play. Now, I guess they're kind of fun or whatever, but I just didn't find vehicles particularly useful, even in the big team battle modes and on on the maps and situations where ideally they should be the most cut out for. I didn't get a lot of use out of vehicles, and I feel like they were almost too easy to kill. I say that with great trepidation because I don't want vehicles to be insanely overpowered either, but they didn't seem to be, like, they didn't have the same presence that they have had in older Halo games, and I think that's a bit of a mistake, but an easy one to fix. Also, while the map layouts are good for the most part, and the line of sights and engagements are all extremely well thought out, I feel like some of the maps have a lot of just, like, crap laying around that doesn't need to be there. Like, there's a lot of just unnecessary garbage and things that exist, just random objects that don't need to be in the map, and I felt like that was a lot of the charm of Halo 3, where the maps were, like, laned out, but they were pretty minimalistic in terms of the things within those lanes, and I feel like this game could use a little bit of cleaning up in the maps, but that's just me. Another issue I have is with the radar. Now, it's a little bit different from my issue with the beta because I just felt like it worked somewhat strangely, but eventually I ended up figuring out it's a little bit more of a me problem, but I feel like the radar problem in Infinite full multiplayer is the range isn't enough. It seems like by the time an enemy's even within your visible range, you can at least know where they are exactly, and you'll be able to hear them. Like, they're literally within footstep distance, so I don't think the range on radar is extended far enough. Maybe even just a little bit could go a long way. There's a few other changes that I would certainly make to the balance, but, you know, those could be argued ad nauseum. The biggest thing for me, and I guess it's just going to be on the launch of Halo, it's not necessarily due to the MP itself, but from what I understand, the game is going to launch without Forge mode, and I feel like that's a really big mistake, as most of Halo's replayability relies on Forge mode to some degree, and while the multiplayer experiences are going to be fun, they are going to get somewhat repetitive, even with all the variety that exists within these modes. It's going to start to wear on you a little bit, and I really think that Forge mode will, you know, eventually it'll be added, but it's going to need to hopefully be really stellar as well. Also, I'm just going to come out and say it, the more I play multiplayer, the more it confirms it in my mind how well Halo would play if it had a battle royale, which I don't really understand why is a vitriolic subject in the first place. As somebody who doesn't really care either way, it's just like, I enjoy battle royale games for the most part, and I think Halo would just systematically and mechanically work well as a BR. I don't think it'll ever happen. I just don't see that being a possibility, but I feel like it's an unfortunate missed opportunity for Halo to take a confident step forward in, like, a new direction. It would be cool to see, but I don't think it'll ever happen. All in all, my multiplayer experience was a lot better than I thought it was going to be. I figured I was done with Halo when sort of I quit, like, around Halo Reach or so, and I didn't think I'd ever pick it up again, but Halo Infinite was honestly pleasantly surprising and reminded me why I enjoyed Halo from the start, and I feel like because it's free to play, there's virtually no risk in checking it out for yourself. So I'm very curious on to what you guys think about it as well, but anyways, I hope you guys did enjoy this video. If you did, make sure to drop a like, subscribe also if you're new to the channel, and let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. But hope you guys have a fantastic rest of your day, and I'll see you all on the next one. Take it easy. I'm gonna go, and peace out.